Hello, guys. Welcome to another match reaction. Oh, that light just went right off. Good thing I have these other lights. Welcome to another match reaction. Everton won, Arsenal won. Definitely not the best game, but I think I'm getting the feeling that Arsenal have pretty much checked out of the Premier League. They're not, they weren't horrendous today. I'm not gonna say that we were horrendous, but there's definitely like a noticeable drop um off in whatever. Um I think people maybe were saving themselves for the Real Madrid game. There was very little energy. Now we pretty much always struggle against Everton anyway, so them if they didn't lay down, we were definitely going to have some problems in this game. And I think, Everton did play well today, and so that we struggled a little bit. But I do think that going through these next couple of games in the Premier League, it's going to be very much so like if they don't lay down, we'll struggle because this team has fully checked out. Like they just don't. They're not playing the worst that they've ever played, but it's just a noticeable level drop. And I mean, the level already wasn't great this season from the very beginning. There was a noticeable flatness. We couldn't be any more flat. We couldn't be any more flat at the moment. And I kind of get it, but at the same time, it's like you guys do need to make sure that you secure Champions League as quickly as possible, because if it becomes even a question closer towards the end of the season, we're going to be in trouble. I don't think we'll fall out, but I'm just saying I'd rather it be set in stone so that we can fully check out of the season, because I can't wait to check out of this shitty hotel. This hotel had bed bugs. This hotel has bad room service. This hotel has, no hot water. This is the worst hotel I've ever been at, so I cannot wait to check out of it. But we can't quite check out of it until, in regards to the Premier League, until we get the Champions League over the line. And so, like I said, today wasn't the worst I've ever seen us play. It's not like I thought we played like the worst I've ever seen us play. But there's like, we conceded that goal. And, obviously we'll talk about the goal. We conceded that penalty, and there was never a point in which, we conceded right after halftime. And there was never a point where there was a sense of urgency, a sense of desperation, throw the kitchen sink. It was very much like we're almost like okay with getting this draw. And it's hard to watch. Like it is hard to watch Arsenal kind of just, I think we're at the point in the season where we already know that this has not been our best season, but we've just really struggled to like up the tempo, up the levels, really pin a team in, really get the shots off, look like a good, decent attacking side. And again, it's not like we're terrible. Our lowest level is still very good, but yeah, today was giving very much like we got Real Madrid at the week, so we don't really give a fuck. And it's hard to watch. I debated getting up. It was 4:30 when I got up, and I just thought to myself, do I really want to get up and watch this shit? But I'm like, don't be a puss, get up, watch it. And I do wish I can get my 90 minutes back, but Sterling and Yeri coming off at halftime, I do think, they were saying it was pre-planned. I don't think it was. I think idealistically you'd want Sterling to play all 90 minutes because you'd want to be able to rest whoever. You'd want to maybe, I think maybe Saka would have come in like the last 30 minutes if we, weren't playing so poorly. But I do think Yeri and Sterling really struggled in that first half. And I think a lot of our inability to create good things up front really lived and died on their toe, and that's not to like blame them for everything. But I think often when we concede in the second half and then after that we don't really do much, or we don't get the goal back, the whole first half is thrown out and we pretend like there weren't opportunities or things that we could have done better in the first half. It's just what do we do after the goal? That first half was emblematic of who we've been this season, where we're pretty dominant, we're camped out in their half, we're winning the ball back, we're aggressive, we're this and that, all the way up until it touches the forward's feet. And then all of a sudden it's like they put in the worst cross they possibly could have. They can't get past their man. They cross it behind someone. They go out the end line. And I'm just going to say it again. When we get attackers that can have an action, like action after action, they're not so one trick pony, and they can beat their man and make a difference in the final third, we'll be such a better team, because these are not terrible players, but they're just not at the standard that's going to bail us out of a difficult game at Goodison Park. Like, we always struggle there. And I just think ultimately when it comes to like why we struggle is because we struggle going up north. It doesn't matter who it fucking is. If we have to go up north, we're fucking struggling. Whether it's Man United, Man City, Liverpool, or Everton, we don't like going up north. And I don't know what that is. But when we go to Goodison Park, we know it's going to be a difficult game. And it was a physical game. I think the referee had a terrible outing. I'm not going to lie. But I think Everton did a lot of good things to try to stifle us. But when you have attackers that just cannot make the action, it's not, they just don't got it. Like, that's all I'm going to say, and that's not to shade Ethan. Ethan's young, but Sterling is washed, and when we finally did score, I was like shocked, because the time prior to that, when Kivior put the ball into space, it was like the worst counterattack. Trossard lets them catch up to him, and then they're, whatever his name was, I don't know, Brathwaite or whatever, tackled him. I'm like, we are so bad on transition. And then when we did score, I was like, wow, Sterling actually got the ball out from underneath his feet. But we can only do it once a game, so it was rough. We did rotate, so I expected a little bit of a drop off, but ultimately there just wasn't enough energy, for the matchup, we conceded and then it was like, and we conceded, and Saka and Martinelli were both on the pitch at that time, so it wasn't like we went 20, 30 minutes post conceding with Ethan and Trossard and Sterling. We had our two best wingers out there, so it was shit, it just wasn't great, was it? So it's kind of like whatever, because we know the season is over, but idealistically I'd rather us just kind of like, not be ass, for once, but I guess this team is just going to stink it out in the Premier League until the very, very end, aren't they? So yeah. Luth says, I know the referee totally son of a prick in this game, but we should win because we have a lot of chance. Trossard should score, Odegaard should score, Marino should score. There was a lot of stuff even really before that, like the whole first half. When we get into the final third, people just give everybody a pass, because if it's not a clear-cut opportunity where somebody gets a shot off, they act like we didn't have any opportunities, or we camp out in the other team's half the entire game. So the whole first half cannot go just unlooked at. Why is it that when they get into those wide areas, they put in the worst crosses they possibly could, or they lose the ball, or, it's just, they can't get a shot off, but when we do get one chance, it's like, if you don't score that one chance, then you're in trouble. And my whole thing is like, we've had this conversation multiple times this season. It's that when everybody kind of blamed Martinelli after the Bournemouth game away for missing that one chance, I kind of understood it. But at the same time, it's like, what other chances did we have? The likelihood of getting one clear-cut chance and scoring is highly unlikely when you don't have a super clinical front line, so we operate in a situation where we have attackers that need multiple chances, but we only create like one clear-cut chance a game. And then when that person misses, then we're like, oh, but it's all their fault. What about all the times that our attackers just get it and don't get past their man? What about all the times that they cross it and the amount of crosses that like Ethan, MLS, love him, but MLS, just cross it into no man's land. Those are opportunities as well. We need to create a higher volume of chances, but you can't when it lives and dies at your forward's feet. They don't got it. I'm sorry. Zezo says they've done it to Lewis Skelly against Wolves, now Everton. I think somebody said like a couple of weeks ago that they were concerned about the narrative that was going to run around MLS, and it's there definitely. Anytime that he touches somebody or whatever, it's going to be a penalty or a red card. They've already kind of made him the target, and so because that's never a penalty. If that had happened on the other end, we probably would have been called for a foul. You know what I mean? Um, or something, or a dive or something. Like there's no way. It just wasn't a penalty. Um, the referee wanted to give it. In fact, he just had a really, really poor game. The referee, he gave that penalty. Um, he Tarkovsky clearly fouls Timber in the box, and instead of calling the foul and then them not getting the corner back, he talks to Tarkovsky, somebody that shouldn't even have been there, by the way. He should have been suspended for 3 games. He shouldn't even been there. He calls him and Timber to talk. Why are you calling Timber to talk? Timber did not foul Tarkovsky. Tarkovsky fouls Timber. That should be a foul against Tarkovsky. And then they get another chance to put in a corner. Then right after that, Raya catches the ball and then tries to kick it out. And one of the Everton players gets in the way and interferes, and he misses that as well. The referee had a horrible game, so he did. He had a horrendous match. Irwin says, if it was Sterling, no way the refs gives us that pen. Shamari says, I can't deal with these refs. I can't wait until we get attackers who can bail us out despite being done by the refs. Says we dominated that whole game. And that's what I'm saying. It's like we went the whole first half dominating in terms of territory and being in their box and stuff like that, but everyone gets a pass in those scenarios because you only really think about the one chance, maybe one clear-cut chance that we had, or maybe the one shot or whatever. The fact that it lives and dies at our attackers' feet so often, where they just don't make the right decision, or they can't get past their man, or they make whatever, it's just, you shouldn't be camped out in somebody's half for the whole first half and then not create anything. And again, or not, because we didn't even really test what's his name in the first half. I know that we scored, but we really didn't test him. We got, they gave us the ball and then we took advantage and we punished them. But in terms of like actually working Pickford, we really didn't do that at all in the first half. Then both Saka and Martinelli come on, and there's nothing happens after that either. Martinelli had one good shot. I don't think Saka had any shots, and there's a period of time before anyone else comes on either. So all I'm saying is that like there's often a lot of times where we're dominant, but do you guys not want, like, this is not to sound condescending, but it's like, when you watch a lot of football and you watch other teams, I don't know how you could watch our attackers and not see that we're like desperate for players that can just solve problems. When you give the ball over and over again to Dembele, over and over again to Barcola, Doué, players like that, Lamine Yamal, Rafinha, they solve problems. They get shots off, they create for each other, they get past their man, they make good runs, they're dynamic. You get somebody like Lewandowski, he takes a shot on sight. We just don't have those types of things. So everything just died at the feet of Ethan and Sterling in that first half. And like, obviously it's 2 different scenarios because Ethan is a young player, whatever, and Sterling is washed. But even when Saka and Martinelli came on, it wasn't that different of a story. They were on when we conceded the goal. So yeah, like, hello. Kandwani says, I'm sorry, but Saka ain't fit. He can't start against Madrid. He will, though. He was going to play every minute of those 2 games. So, yeah. Shamaria says, I can't. Oh, yeah, I read that one already. Ben says, this wasn't an ideal game before Madrid. Really physical. We got kicked a lot today. I'm disappointed. He played Rice for 90 minutes. We're going to need all his energy on Wednesday. I think Arteta because me and Diluted debated this for 2 streams, for at least 2.5 hours, where we could not come to a definitive answer on who should be rested and who shouldn't. He is probably doing a stream right now and saying that we should have went stronger because Goodison Park is a difficult place and that's why we didn't do well. I am not 100% sure that if we start every single player from the beginning, we win that game. We just don't play well there, and we weren't motivated anyway. Even when we're motivated, we really struggle there. I do think we needed to rest players, but which players do you rest? I mean, I don't know. I couldn't come up with a definitive answer. I was basically saying to just play Marino at left center mid. Bring Jorginho in. I don't give a fuck. Just play whoever you can, because if we had gotten any other big injuries, it's already a lost cause, but it would be even worse. So I was every single time Timber was going to do something, I was like, "Ugh," because he cannot get injured. Um, Miles looks tired. I am concerned about the fact that we haven't actually had the opportunity to rest him the way that we should, because he's playing first team football for the first time in his life. And he's a starter for Arsenal now, going up against, some of the best attackers in the world. And so we're seeing a little bit of, I think, fatigue from Miles, and I'm concerned. And that's the problem with, as much as I love him, Calafiori, is that this is probably the one time this season that we desperately needed you to either cover for Miles or to cover for Gabrielle, and you are not here. So, and it's tough. So I think Arteta and the staff are in a rock and a hard place when it came to choosing who to rest. And I think only they know which players were close to the red zone. And so I have to imagine that resting Partey was more of a he's in the red zone, but how unserious does our midfield become if you try to rest both Partey, all three of Partey, Odegaard, and Rice? How deeply unserious does that midfield become? It was already pretty struggly today. They weren't horrendous, but it was already struggly. So how much more struggly could it get? So I think Arteta was like, maybe felt like Rice was the one person that didn't need as much rest and then made that decision. Maybe he could have taken him out early, but we were also chasing the game, which is why not having good attackers that can bail you out at Goodison Park in the first half, when we're dominant, is we never have the opportunity really to rest players because we're never enough goals up to have the game set ever. So you can't take off a Rice. You really can't, so that's definitely something that will help us, is if we just have the type of players that bail you out in the first half and end the game just there, you're up 2-3-0, whatever, at least 2-0, then you can start resting players. But this season, we have never really been up enough to actually rest people. Maybe like the 7-1 and the 5-1 against, Man United or Man City or whatever. But for the most part, our games have been pretty tight, and we've drawn a lot of fucking games, so I think the club was in a rock and a hard place trying to choose who they were going to rest. I can't be upset. You can't rest everyone, because then we become deeply unserious. We were already unserious as it is. Brantel says Rice has the endurance of a triathlete. Yeah, I do think that, like, he's the one that they can see from a fitness level is going to be able to recover after a tough game away from home against Everton. Imagining like Partey getting battered and bruised and having to, stop them on transition or whatever may have happened today. He's a player that probably did need the rest, because I think he played like the whole game against Fulham, so 3 games in a week, or whatever, in a span, whatever, probably wouldn't have worked for Partey, but probably does work for Rice. So I want to give them the benefit of the doubt there, because I could not tell you who needed rest, because I don't know what their fitness levels are. I really don't know where they're at. I don't have that information. Sam says, I'm somewhat hopeful about next season. Getting that con man Edu out of our club will change a lot. I'm really happy that, I do think that Berta gets to see the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde of this team. When we're at our best, it's a lot of that has to do with the structure and the quality of our back line, and how what really goes amiss is once it goes further forward and how we are looking everywhere but our attackers to solve problems in the final third. And so this is somebody who has a long like a long track record and a lot of experience in bringing in the types of attackers that do bail you out. And he will do that for us because we don't have that. We're looking everywhere but that, you know. Shamaria says, Berto would have seen a lot of our problems today. Exactly. 100%. Still shocked that we brought Sterling in on deadline. He was really poor today. I know he got the assist for the Trossard goal, but again, this is why you watch football with your eyes. Ultimately, the amount of times that he touched the ball and made the wrong decision or took a heavy touch, the diving is really fucking annoying. It's giving lack of confidence. And so not trying to kick him while he's down. He's obviously in the worst period of his career, but the amount of times that we bring in these players at the worst time in their career, it really grinds my fucking gears. Why can't we bring in somebody going into the height of their career or is excited to play or whatever? The amount of Williams and Sterlings that we've brought in over the years, it's really starting to get on my fucking nerves, So it's really hard to feel like for Arsenal, I feel bad that we have Sterling, even though I do have a little bit of like feeling bad for Sterling because of just as black as my heart can be, I do have like a little bit of a soft spot because I know that he doesn't get the credit that he deserved over the years. But man, as an Arsenal fan, it's not good. He's so bad. He's so bad. Let's see. Jado says we need a proper striker. It's just the overthinking of absolutely everything it's just not that deep. I really do think that we're overthinking everything. With better attackers, you get better results. They bail you out, they make half chances into full chances. We're probably up there for touches in the opposition's box. We have to be statistically in terms of the amount of times we touch the ball in the opposition's box has to be higher than like everybody except for probably Liverpool and City. But the output that we get from those touches is fucking horrendous. No, there's times when we touch the ball in the opposition's box more than the opposition touches the ball ever, but we have less shots than them because they run down there twice and take a shot and we tittle tattle with it and have to, do all the bullshit. Just fucking shoot. There was one time in today's game where Trossard gets it and he's in the six, like he is right there. And instead of just taking the most for like the shittiest toe shot that you could take, because at that state, right where he was standing, he could not have missed the target. Instead of doing that, he gets it caught underneath his feet. We recycle. It gets to Jorginho. Jorginho draws the foul. But I'm like, how does it get from Trossard in the six in a good position to even just take a pot fucking shot to Jorginho outside the box? That is the problem with this team. We're in such good positions, and we have like, I think as a fan base, we've thought that we like, because they're not clear-cut opportunities, that we don't create anything. But just the fact that you're in a position to shoot and you don't take it is fucked. You need to shoot. And the amount of times that we shoot when we're not open pisses me off as well. When you're open, you don't shoot. When you're locked up, you're trying to shoot. What are you doing? So yeah, it's crazy to me. So yeah, Victor says top 3 touches in the box is City, Liverpool, Arsenal in Europe. They're in the box, guys. They're in the box. They're in the box. They're in the box. They're in the box, man. They're in the box, but they're not making anything shake. And yeah. Just watch other teams. Today, who's playing today? Let's look. Let's look. Let's see. Who plays today? Real Madrid, you could watch them, I guess. When do Barcelona play? They play today at 12, at 8 p.m. for you guys in the UK. Watch them. Watch them and tell me the biggest difference between us and them in terms of when their attackers get the ball, what do they do with the ball? Do they just give it up? Do they always concede for the corner instead? Because that also gets on my nerves. The fact that our attackers seem really excited to get corners instead of taking their man on, because we're not scoring from corners like we were before. We just need better attackers. I'm so sorry. Let's see. What else? And every single game that goes by, whether we win or lose, whether he plays well or not, Odegaard gets the blame. He was on for 13 minutes, so I'm not quite sure what he was meant to do from minute 1 to minute 75 because he wasn't on the pitch. And this is why I know people are not thinking straight and they've just decided that one player is the problem. They have completely disregarded the first 75 minutes of the game where, again, at halftime, both Saka and Martinelli came on. So if you're blaming Odegaard, what did Saka and Martinelli do? They didn't do anything either. And I'm not even trying to shade them because it's not really even about that for me. It's whether he's on the pitch or not, we don't play well. Whether Saka's on the pitch or not, there's still something missing. So I'm not quite sure how Odegaard's getting blamed for the 13 minutes that he played when we conceded at the 45th minute, and there was 30 minutes between that time and the time that he came on the pitch. So what was he meant to do then? This is how I know, because I had somebody in my group chat do that. The minute Odegaard came on, they blamed him. That's how I know that it's not real. You can say that he's had a bad season. He has. But if you blamed him for today, it is what it is. I don't know who you're covering for. I don't know, what it is about this fan base and needing one scapegoat all the time. But the biggest difference between us and every other good attacking team in Europe is the fact that we have a deficit of talent in our attacking third. And the minute that is solved, they will relieve the pressure off of needing a left center mid that scores 10 goals and gets 15 assists, needing a right center mid that does it, because we want them to do the job of the attackers because we don't ask enough of them, because people want Havertz to be good enough because they've decided that they want to protect Arteta so badly that they want to make Havertz work. If you think that Havertz is better than Odegaard or that he deserves to be here more than Odegaard, respectfully, you can leave. You can leave. Take your shit and get out, because ain't no way I know that this fan base has been manipulated so badly off of one of the worst players that we've ever bought in our history. So much so that they will protect him over somebody that was our player of the season twice over. My goodness. It has been a long season. I cannot wait for it to be over because the narratives, the brain deadedness, it's just gotten to the stage where I'm like, y'all even be thinking for real. And that's not even to say that I don't think Odegaard has had a poor season. I do think so. But if you blamed him for today, you've shown your cards. You've showed that you have an unnatural and forced hate for a player for whatever reason. I don't know who you're trying to protect. Is it Mikel? Like, who are you trying to protect? I don't get it. Who are you trying to protect, man? Josh says, God willing, Big Berto will drag us out of this fire. Let's see. Sam says, preach Jess. Rice was actually good today. He's actually been good for a while now. So definitely wasn't on him. Again, we were pretty dominant the game. It was kind of flat. We scored a goal that we needed to score. We conceded a soft penalty, and we just couldn't get our energy up enough or put enough pressure on whatever to get that second goal. We have drawn like 11 games this season. So there's enough evidence there to show that we really struggle once we concede the goal, the equalizer, to get up for the second goal. So if you're trying to blame Rice for that, again, who are you trying to protect? That's 11 games of evidence that it can't just be one player. It can't. It cannot just be one player when you have enough evidence to show that there's something with the team, that they play at such a controlled level that they can't release some of that control or release that type of like, trying to keep the level, they're always trying to keep it calm. And that works at an even game state or when we're winning. But when we need a fucking goal, you need to up the level a little bit. And we don't have that. That can't just be one player. That is a Arsenal problem. Can't blame one player for one thing, or for the whole thing. And that includes blaming Martinelli for our entire season, blaming Havertz for our entire season. There is no way that you can blame one or two players for what we've seen this season. No way. Victor says, you guys are getting way too hyped on the bird of smoke. There's only so much he can do under this board. Tim Lewis and the ownership, just call your expectations. I feel like as long as he gets the winger and the striker and the midfielder, I do think that we'll see a market improvement in because the thing is Edu couldn't get any attackers. He physically had no ability to get an attacker in this last window. He had all summer to do it and he failed. So just in that itself, I think Berta will be able to at least get it done. Now, in terms of like people think we're going to get a whole new team, I agree with Victor. Pump the fucking brakes. And we also don't need a full team. The idea that we need a whole new team is just based on Arsenal fans are so overly emotional about everything. As soon as something doesn't work, instead of keeping the problem there and like, okay, we've known we've needed attackers for like 2 summers now. But now it's like, oh, but our midfield is not scoring 10, 15 goals. And so is not, our DM is not able to create all of our chances. Oh my gosh. Those are not the problems. It's been not having attackers. That's always been the problem that we've had over the last 2 summers that we haven't fixed. That's all we need to do. Just do that. That in itself gets us like those 11 draws that we have, you could cut that in half. And that's 10 points right there. Just having somebody that can create something out of nothing. Or when they're in on goal, they can just put the ball in the back of the net. Or make it so that the opposition doesn't have such an easy day out. So they actually have to defend us. And that opens up space and opportunities for other people. We are so stagnant. We are so stiff and rigid. And we play at such a low vibe in terms of this pace in which we pass, the movement in which we make, and the amount of numbers that we throw forward that we don't make it difficult for anyone. So that's just, I don't know how you guys are blaming one player for that. Any one fucking player. It cannot be one player's fault. Let's see. Shamaria says people think Odegaard is getting replaced. MM says no, Odegaard is far from the problem. I think that if you're coming away from today's game and you've made Odegaard your main thing, then you don't actually know ball. There's just no way that you could come from this game, and this is just separate from the overall conversation around needing more creativity. Replacing one player and putting in another creative player is not going to solve our problem. We need more creativity. One player that has to play in the same position that Odegaard is playing, because by the way, our system is not going to change. So you watch our system and you see the way that our right center mid acts, they are an 8. And I think that's the biggest thing that some people have not clocked and why they're still living in 2022, 2023 is we don't play with a 6, an 8, and a 10 like we did in 2022, 2023. We now play with 2 6s and a fucking 8. At best, a 6 and 2 8s. That has changed absolutely everything and has put way, way more pressure on the attackers to actually be better than what they actually are. The system made Martinelli and Jesus and our entire group of attackers look so much better because we had overloads everywhere. We just had so many players in the right positions at the right time. Now we don't have that. So we need better attackers to overcompensate for that. I don't know why people haven't clocked it. They're still living in 2022, 2023. In every way, shape, and form, in the way that they analyze Partey, in the way that they analyze the midfield in general, in the way that they analyze Martinelli. Everything is based upon a season that was 2 seasons ago when we don't even play that way anymore. Arteta has completely stopped playing that way. It's gone. It's done, you know? It's done, you know? And looking at other players that play in different systems doesn't help, because as soon as you put another number 10 in that position, they will struggle as well. Why? Because they're not getting a free role. Do you really think Odegaard is just staying in the position because he can't move and he can't get into those positions to make better passes? You guys really think Odegaard is just standing there because he can't do it? Come on now. Come on now. Like, surely you're not that deep in your hate of a player that you would actually say that you don't think Odegaard can get into better positions and create chances for us. Surely not. Surely not. Did you just watch him for Norway? He what did he get? Like 3 assists or some shit like that? Back end of last season, the pass that he put in for Havertz. You guys really think Odegaard doesn't have the ability to put the ball on a plate for one of our players? Our system doesn't let anybody fucking move. Arteta doesn't want anybody to move. Come on now. And the one player that's actually going to follow the manager's instructions is going to be Odegaard. He's the captain. He's playing the way that Arteta wants him to. So you really think he's going to put somebody that he trusts less in that position and they're just going to have magical freedom? Saka doesn't even get freedom. What makes you think we're going to bring in Wirtz or Xavi Simons or whoever the fuck you guys want, and they're just going to get magical freedom because Arteta just trusts them more? There's nobody that he trusts more than Martin Odegaard, and he doesn't give him anything, or Saka. So what do you guys think is going to happen? I genuinely think that this fan base needs somebody. Well, once Havertz went down, they needed another somebody to beat down. Like and they've just given it all over to Odegaard because they beat Martinelli to death. Martinelli is down in the ground somewhere underneath, 6 feet under. They done buried that child. Boom, 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 boom. So now they need somebody else. We just need better attackers, guys. It's not that deep. And I cannot wait to get those attackers, and then our lives become easier, and all of this will look so stupid because it's just dumb. It's just dumb. Ash says, Odegaard is to be played as a 10-man. His best moments versus Fulham was when he was on the edge of the box picking out passes. Him at the 8 has ruined him this season. But you can't do that. Arteta has changed the system. He doesn't play with a 10. I would love for Odegaard to be released of all the other duties that most number 10s in the league don't have to have. De Bruyne has never had the type of, and I'm not saying Odegaard and De Bruyne are the same, but what I'm saying is like number 10s like Bruno and Kevin De Bruyne and, Morgan Gibbs-White and players like that, Cole Palmer, they don't have to do half of the shit that Odegaard has to do. They don't have to come back and receive the ball off a fucking goalkeeper and get us going. They don't have to do any of that. They just float around the pitch with no defensive responsibilities and just get on the edges of things. And that's how Odegaard played in the 2022-2023 season because he had 2 midfielders behind him that did the other stuff. Odegaard now does Xhaka's role and his own role from the 2022-2023 season because the left 8 doesn't do any of that. That's my problem with the midfield, is that there's not equal responsibilities. I felt like in that season, everybody played their role and it worked so well. Xhaka balanced Partey so well. Rice and Partey don't work together to me. I don't think that they work well together. I think they're good enough players individually that most games we still look good. But in terms of a partnership, I don't see a partnership there like I did with Xhaka and Partey. And that partnership relieved Odegaard of having to do any of the other stuff. He didn't have to do any of the other stuff. You never saw Odegaard in that season dropping all the way back by Raya and getting the ball and starting our attacks from back there. Never. You never saw it. It was also rare that Xhaka was in front of Odegaard. Xhaka was usually behind Odegaard because he was usually having to cover for Zinchenko because Zinchenko was pinching in. We don't play like that anymore, guys. We don't. So what I'm hoping for next season, so that all of this kind of stops, is that we supplement the attack meaning we bring in another attacking midfielder because not having anybody else is egregious. I do agree that we should bring somebody in to replace whatever Fabio and Emil were bringing, because as much as those players didn't really have a big impact on that season, you still got the odd moments from them, especially like Fabio, so I think making sure that you supplement with somebody else, because we cannot put all the stuff on Ethan. Ethan is a great young player, but I think you can see already that you need to lessen the burden. Bring in another attacking player so that if we need to be more attacking, you can put them in with Odegaard and we get a little bit more extra. I think Arteta needs to loosen the reins a little bit and fix his left center mid situation. That has been the card, or the one card that you pulled out and the whole thing fell down. You guys ever played Jenga before? Pushing that one little piece out, you think it's going to be okay, and it ended up being structural, and then your whole thing fell down. Ever since left center mid, it's been a travesty of trying it. The ripple effect has been so huge on the left wing and on the midfield at large. So fix that, and then we'll see where we go. Buy some fucking attackers that when the ball gets to their feet, the attack doesn't just die. Attackers that make runs, attackers that hit through the ball, attackers that are going to be in the 6, and instead of recycling the ball backwards so it gets to Jorginho outside the box, they just take a shot. That's, and then we'll see where we're at. If Odegaard has another poor season, then I'll see. I think that I'll understand a little bit more the frustration, because then it becomes less about, if you have the attackers in front of you and we've solved the midfield and it's better balanced, then you should naturally play better. If you don't, then we have a problem. But with all the other issues, and the fact that Odegaard can go to his national team and play a lot better, and that kind of stuff, and he's played really well for us in the past, I'm finding it really difficult to just say, well, he's shit, get rid. I think that that's brain dead. I'm sorry. RM says, will the left 8 ever be fixed? Rice is probably going to play there next season if we get Zubi. I don't know. Johnny D says, when Yeri was useless for nearly 2 months now, you definitely can't rely on him next season if you want to win a title. My guess is that we do. Blaze says, the problem is that we didn't replace Xhaka with a better player. Xhaka, Partey, Odegaard was more balanced midfielders than Rice, Partey, Odegaard. It's just not balanced. The left center mid for me doesn't create enough football, meaning when they get the ball, it's wall passes, it's simple things. And that's not to shade Rice, because I think Rice has adapted to the role so well that it makes people think that it's working when it's just not as seamless as it was before. And that's not because Rice is like a worse player than Xhaka. If you ask most people in world football who they think is better, they'd probably say Rice, in terms of the two and who has the higher ceiling. And, because Xhaka's old now, right? But Xhaka, what he does on the ball, he has more in terms of the passing, and the passing range is definitely something. And he played as a 10 for a long time for club and country. And so when you have somebody that's used to being on the edges of the box, able to seam those little passes through, and is able to see the big picture, I think a lot clearer than Declan, it just makes everything so much better. And so now what we have is Odegaard deeper, kind of closer-ish to Partey, floating around the center circle instead of in front of the center circle, where Rice is more in front of the center circle. And so it's just a different dynamic that's not as balanced. And so I've never seen anybody destroy something that worked so well than Mikel, because the two signings of Rice and Havertz have complicated our lives way more than they needed to, despite how I feel about the quality of each player, because you guys know how I feel about Rice. I love him to death. But if you weren't going to play him in the 6, you should have never bought him. You should have never bought him, because this whole idea that he can play 6 and 8, it doesn't suit us as well. It doesn't suit Odegaard and Partey as well. It doesn't suit Martinelli as well either. So we're struggling. We're struggling with that. Sam says, we bought Havertz to play the 8. Now we use him as a mediocre striker. And then they ruin Rice then by forcing him to the 8. What honestly, you guys, I know we're not really talking about the game, but what is there to talk about? the way that we started that season, the last season, is I really do believe that that's what Mikel wanted to do. I don't think you start off a season like that, and that's not what you want to do. I think his big game lineup was always going to be what we saw against City. Big game lineup in the Community Shield that's what he wanted to do. Big game lineup was always going to be his best defense, which was Ben, the two, and then Timber. That was going to be his big game thing. Plus the midfield of Odegaard, Rice, and Partey, and then whatever forwards, most probably Havertz. That was going to be his big game lineup because he showed that against the Community Shield. He had other options. There were other options available, but that's what he chose to do. So I think that's what his big game lineup was going to be. His everyday lineup was going to be what we saw against Nottingham Forest. That was totally unprovoked. He did not need to do what he did there. Tomiyasu was there. So even though we had the injury, to Timber midway through the game, and it was you didn't have Gabrielle because I don't know what the fuck was going on there. There was still other options that didn't require him to put Partey at right back, and I think he thought that was going to work. That's how he was going to get all of those players in at once: Havertz, Rice, Odegaard, and Partey, and it was a train wreck. It was a train wreck because he hadn't gone back to it. So I feel like he kind of knows. I mean, he's tried to play it a couple times, but I think kind of knows that didn't work. But that started the beginning of the end because all you needed to do was replace Granite. And had you have done that with a better player, I don't think the ripple effect that we have now would be there because you wouldn't have to try to find a way to put Havertz into the team. If Havertz doesn't exist, then this past summer we would have gotten a striker. But because we had Havertz and he played well, that made the club feel comfortable not having a striker. You guys not see the dominoes? That's some crazy fucking dominoes right there. You don't need to do that, Brantel says that's Pep's philosophy. Multi-position players failed at Arsenal. John says Rice has the passing ability, but he doesn't take the risk that Partey or Xhaka, but he also doesn't have the ability on the left hand. I think our left-hand side does require a left footer in that position. I think the right-hand side is kind of okay with the way that we have it set up. I know some people would prefer a right footer on the right-hand side, but I think whatever the combo of Saka, Rice, and not Saka, Rice, Saka, Odegaard, and Ben White we've seen work and click perfectly. Ever since we've had a right footer on that side, it has completely shut off the faucet on that side for our left winger because it's just the angle. Like, I don't know how to explain it because I'm not a fucking tactico, but I know enough to know that if you cannot hit those passes that Kivior was hitting into the channel today for Trossard and Martinelli is what we don't have from our left-sided midfielder, because Rice cannot hit that pass because you would need to be able to open up your body and clip it down the line. He can't do that. So if he wants to hit that ball, he's going to have to hit it onto his right. The angle is closed, the time is closed, and then what are you going to do? A lot of times when Rice tries to play the ball in behind, it's mostly on the other side. It's more of a big switch from the left to the right because that's the angle that he has. The angle that he has is to hit it across that way. But that little pass in behind, whether it's on the ground in between the lines or just clipped over the left back, that's been completely shut off this season. And that's how Martinelli eats. That is the food that Martinelli needs. He needs the ball over the defender's shoulder into that pocket, hit properly. And we don't have that. We don't have that. Like, go watch some clips of Xhaka from that season. He used to hit that ball in that seam all the time. Him and Zinchenko were constantly feeding Martinelli into those positions. And now nobody feeds him in those positions. No one feeds him in those positions. That's not to say Martinelli doesn't have his own limitations, but with a limited player that needs to run off the shoulder of the defender, you cannot cut off his food supply. And they completely cut it off by not having a left-footed center mid, especially because now Zinchenko doesn't play that position to also give a little bit of that too. I'm not sure how people don't see that shit. I'm not sure how people are not seeing that. 2 seasons of the left-hand side not working, and y'all haven't seen that we need a left-footed left center mid. We need it like air. We need it like air, man. Chemist says, I get the logic of Rice at the 8 because he's pivotal to the counter pressing, but I'd rather lose that to have some creativity. Josh says, do you think MLS can do it? I do, but it's just a different, because he did do it. He did it in the low stakes, but he did it in the Carabao Cup against one of those teams that we played. He gave it to Sterling, and then Sterling hit it across to Ethan. And that's probably like the last time I've seen us actually do that pass. I just feel the left center mid needs to do that pass because our left back doesn't invert as much. I know that Miles Lewis-Skelly does his mazy runs, but it's a completely different application than what we had with Zinchenko, who quite literally played left center mid for us. You had Xhaka, Zinchenko, Partey, and Odegaard, and Jesus all in possession playing midfield for Arsenal. So we always had creativity, players between the lines. We had different types of bias and angles and all type of stuff to get us through that midfield and to beat anybody's press. It's not like that now. Miles Lewis-Skelly does a lot, the random kind of like, but he doesn't really play in midfield for us like that. He doesn't, not like Zinchenko did. And then Rice is all over the place and doesn't really get into those positions to clip it over the back line like that. So it's, yeah, it is. I don't know. Richard Sam says foolish behavior. I don't know, maybe me. Sam says, my personal opinion is that Arteta is ruining Wanyeri and Skelly by playing them out of position. Aw, come on. Ruining them. No, I don't think he's ruining them because I feel like had this been before international break, nobody was saying it's ruining them because they were playing better then. I feel like they're hitting the physical wall of young players that are playing big man's football now. They're having to play like everyone else plays, where they play every minute for every game for Arsenal, and then they turn around and play for their national team and turn right back around and have to play more games, whether that's in Europe or in the Prem, So a couple of weeks ago, wasn't nobody saying that they were being ruined. It's just they've had a couple of kind of iffy matches, and now it's, Ethan just can't play out wide. What happened to the energy around Ethan was going to show Saka levels and that he had all this extra, that Saka didn't have, and he was more well-rounded and he was just so good and you're so happy of him on the wing. What happened to that? I'm not saying you exactly said that, but a lot of people were saying that. Gunnar says, are you going to do the ratings? No, we don't do ratings anymore. We just do a match reaction. Does anybody want to actually do the ratings? If you want to, you can put your ratings in there, but we pretty much talked about the game. It was dead, 1-1, never a pen, should have created more in the first half. What else do we really want to talk about? Shamara says, we've gone from Arteta don't trust the youth to Arteta's playing. I don't get it. I think Arsenal fans have a difficult time watching people have to adapt and grow and actually develop. So anytime that they have a poor game, it's some sort of bigger thing than just they're young as fuck and this is their first time. It ain't that deep. They're playing a lot of football. They're going to have ups and downs. If you thought that it was going to be smooth sailing and there wasn't going to be any ups and downs or bad games or whatever, then not everybody is fucking Cesc Fabregas. Not everybody is Cesc Fabregas. I'm telling you right now, he is an anomaly. That's why he's a Prem legend. He is a anoma-fuckingly. That's why he's top of the top, cream of the crop. Most young players, as talented as they are, they're going to have some bad fucking games. They're going to have some games where they just don't look right. And Ethan and MLS have played so much football for us this season that this was always going to come where they were going to have a couple of little not so great, and you have to take the rough with the smooth. Y'all wanted young players in the team, so surely you anticipated the bad game, What did Arsene say? When you play young players, you have to anticipate dropping points. So I think they've done so well considering the pressure that we've been under, the the pressure from Arsenal fans, from you going from a non-factor to the answer, going into their national teams, especially from an MLS perspective, and becoming a starter right off rip, dealing with the scrutiny and all that kind of stuff. I think they've done impeccably well. And I will not say a single bad word about those two because they shouldn't even have to be playing this much. They fucking shouldn't. Brantel says Cesc learned from Vieira. Does it get any better than that? Douglas says it's so baffling seeing Rice in the 8, yet he was initially bought to place for Partey in the 6. We just galaxy brained too much. Mata says, darn, all we need is an anomaly player again. I mean, if we could just get another Cesc, it could just all be, there are no other Cesc. Sorry. Cesc said it himself. The players that we used to love, we will never see again because football does not produce players like that anymore. They don't allow players to become their own players. They all become kind of like little robots, so he's even spoken about it. So the idea that we're going to find a Cesc just chilling in the Barcelona academy and be able to pick him off is not going to happen, so obviously there are top players that you could go get, I'm not saying, but Cesc is cream of the crop. He is if there was no Xavi and Iniesta, who are all timers, Cesc and Cazorla would be looked at as such a different way. Imagine being Xabi Alonso. Imagine being Thiago Alcantara. Imagine being Cesc, Cazorla, players like that. I know I'm missing out someone too. David Silva. Imagine being players like that. At that cream of the crop, that level of player. And probably the only reason why people don't speak about you in that way is because you just played in the same era as Busquets and Xavi and Iniesta. We're talking about Cesc is something else. Cesc was special. John says, so who will be the 6 or 8 between Rice and Zubamendi if Zubamendi comes? I think it's clearly Zubamendi. He'll be. I think Arteta likes this. Arteta is definitely doubling down on, and that's the one thing about Arteta is that he made some big decisions after the first season that we challenged, and he made multiple big decisions, getting rid of Ramsdale and bringing in Raya, and somewhat complicating our season by having both of them in the team at once, which I don't think was a positive thing, although we've come out the other side with Raya. Bringing in Havertz, a player that he had to convince people to want to replace Granit, and then spending $100 million on Rice. Those are huge decisions post a season where we did something that nobody really anticipated prior to the season. So it put a lot of pressure and kind of made things accelerate. And so those are huge decisions that he made, very, very big decisions. And so I don't think that he can just turn around and be like, I fucked that up. I think he has to double down on the idea that he had a 180-page binder on Rice and he knew exactly what type of player he was, and he can play these two positions. He has to double down on Havertz, $65 million, highest earner on a player that nobody would touch with a 10-foot pole in the Premier League after seeing how he played for Chelsea. Those are big decisions that I think he will continue to double down on, because if he goes back on them now, that's crazy. Just saying I'm going to play Rice in the 6 and then moving on Havertz after, that would be a huge he would have to, that's a admittance of I really didn't get that right. In a pivotal moment where the Kroenkes sanctioned a 200 million pound summer that we may never see again. That is probably the only summer where the Kroenkes were going to sanction such a big outlay, was because they believed that we were in the ascension and very, very close to winning the league. 2 seasons after that, we've regressed off of the back of that window. So he's doubling down. So he's going to double down on Rice in this 8 and force it and make it work. And so he's going to bring in a Zubamendi instead of caving and putting Declan in the 6 and just bringing in a Reinders or a Bruno Guimaraes or somebody like that, that elevates that position, So is peak. He has to double down. He must. Josh says, so basically Arteta's ego pride is our biggest enemy. I think it's there. Our biggest enemy is, I mean, on any given day, it could be the Cronkies, it could be but it's big. It's a big thing. RM says the Arteta fanboys think of him so highly in the bracket. Obsessed Carzola and Alonso's tell me I'm wrong. I don't know if the people that love Mikel down believe that his career was anything other than average. Because if they do, then I don't know. But I could not stand Mikel when he came to Arsenal. Not necessarily, it was just getting that batch of players after the 8-2. It was kind of like the Calafiori, Raheem Sterling, Marino window for us now, where you've suffered such a traumatic thing that whatever comes after that, if it's not exactly what you want, you fucking hate it. And I was like, what the fuck is Everton's captain going to do for us right now? We just lost 8-2. My pride is hurt. And so I don't think I came around to Mikel ever. I don't think it was terrible for us, but yeah. I was like, no, I'm so mad at him. I couldn't. I was so mad at that window. We brought 6 players in, but all of them were average. It was illness. Ash says, man, Real Madrid missed a pen, conceded to a corner, literally the best time to play them, but it's so us to be dog shit right now. He wasn't a game changer. Ash says, Valencia scored the greatest own goal. Really? I'm not watching that game. Burmy says, I think MLS and Ethan are the only getting the amount of minutes they've played due to the injury crisis. They're overplayed out of necessity, and it's been beneficial because they're both really talented. And turning a negative into a positive, I think it has to be looked at as a positive. I don't see a negative around MLS and Ethan getting these minutes. I just think you're seeing the natural progression of young players that came from the academy. They didn't play for us last season. They didn't. Ethan got a little pittance minute, against West Ham last season, but for the most part, this is their introductory into first team football for Arsenal. It's not easy. You're not coming into a mid-table team where nobody's going to see you. Everybody's looking at you, and you're expected to be, fucking Pele the minute that you step foot onto the pitch. It's not easy, and they've done remarkably well. They really have. So you won't find me saying a bad word. I will say whether or not I think they played particularly well. I don't think these last 2 games have been Ethan's best moments, but has that changed how I feel about Ethan overall? No, because I'm realistic and I know that young players are going to make mistakes and not be perfect, So yeah, I love them. Mata says, Wolves indirect free kick against Ipswich. Why do these free kicks exist? Vic says, can we donate hamstrings? Gabriel would have scored against Madrid, man. These lot concede like a Sev from set pieces. And to be honest, we've not been great at set pieces since Saka's injury. So it's just all kind of dried up. The deliveries are not the same, and whatever we were doing isn't working anymore. And now that Gabriel's not there, I have no Marino is probably the only person I would imagine can get on the end of something, because most of our players do not have the thing where you could just head it in the back of the net, So, Saka's back, so the deliveries will get better, and Rice does really good deliveries on the other side. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know, man. Victor says, nah, it's not that Arteta's fanboys think he is world-class player, but they think he is a world-class manager. They think that he's the best manager because he's second to the best team ever. I'm just here for the predictable overreaction to results and blame the game, and the blame game that ensues. I don't think to be honest, there's about 700 of you guys in here, so make sure you guys are liking and subscribing. I don't think there has been an overreaction. I think there has been a misplaced blame and the typical people coming out trying to make it one player's fault. And so we've spoken about that. But I think for the most part, it hasn't been a super overreaction. I think if you already didn't rate Mikel, this game wouldn't have changed anything. If you rate Mikel, this game wouldn't have changed anything. I really don't think that there's an overreaction. I do think that a lot of Arsenal fans find a way to make every single result, whether it's good, bad, draw, whatever, into some sort of positive or some sort of nothing. And so nobody after this result and this performance is going to be thinking that this was great. So if you're looking for that, it's not coming. But I think this has been a very good response, like in terms of like a well-tempered response to a draw against a team that we always struggle against, played very flat. But ultimately it doesn't really change our season, you know? Everything is not an overreaction because you're not blowing rainbows and butterflies up everyone's ass, you know? Big says we have to be wary of these Madrid refereeing decisions. They get penalties like candles. Oh, baby, we don't have to be wary of anything because it happens in the Premier League. We are built for this. Like, if there's anything that prepares you for playing against the black magic of Real Madrid, it's playing in the Premier League and being Arsenal, you know? So I think they'll be aware of these things. We will concede a penalty. We will concede a goal. We will concede goals. Like, I'm already anticipating those things. It's how we respond. How did you guys think Kivior did today? I think that's something that we didn't touch on. You know, there was a lot of, I know I'm team, do not play him against Real Madrid. I don't think he was at fault today at all. I think he applied himself well and actually was good on the ball, which can't nobody tell me that boy is not good on the ball. He can pass. He just doesn't show it because he's scared of his own shadow. We know Everton, the pressure cooker that is Goodison Park, is not going to be the same as playing against Real Madrid, but knowing that he's going to play in that game, how did you guys feel about his performance? Because I think it was good considering there was actually some pressure on him. Like, Everton were pressing us. It wasn't like the Man United game where there was like fucking nothing. They were pressing us. They were actually, I thought Everton were really good today. Do I think they deserved the draw? No. But do I think that they did the things that hurt us? Well, yes, I do. And I don't think that like Kivior didn't do the thing where they took the ball off of him and they scored or whatever. I actually think other players were doing that, like White and, you know, Marino, and they were holding on to the ball too fucking long. But I thought he was good. Is it a confidence booster? I mean, I seen him play his best ever game against Man United and then turn around and have a Fulham, you know? So I don't know. I feel I'm still very, very, very like worried about him, but yeah. Vic says this Madrid goalkeeper should start against us, not the octopus. Hope Courtois stays injured. They're going to shoot him up with all type of stuff, man. John says the commentator said Kivior left the ball go over him and MLS had to react from the pen. I already foreshadow him screwing us versus Madrid. You know what? I was making coffee at that moment, so I didn't see that. Maybe it was on him. I don't know. Because I didn't really understand how MLS got himself in that situation anyway. Like, how did he get to the situation where the ball was bouncing over his head and, you know, what happened there? But yeah. Johnny said, after Bayern, I would never play Kivior under pressure, nor White right now. He's not ready. I would play MLS on the right, Tierney on the left, Timber next to Salima. Josh says, White was rusty. Don't think we'll get the best of him again until next season. White would do something good and then show rusty. Do something good, then show rusty. You know, can't really judge him off of this performance in terms of like, you know, whatever. Coming back off of, he hasn't played all season, you know, so you have to imagine he's going to take some time to get up to scruff. But we're really not in a great situation defensively going into this game because we have no real wiggle room unless we fuck around with the midfield to get maybe a stronger center back pairing. So Arteta is going to go with Kivior. I think that's pretty fucking clear. He spoke really glowingly of him in the press conference. I think they're doing the, come on, Kivior, you can do it. But if there's one thing that I know of is that Kivior is going to make at least one big mistake. He just has it in him to have that. I don't think today changed that. Um, it's just about how you respond. I think that's the main thing is I anticipate our defense making a mistake. That happens in football. It's how you react. If you let that become your personality for the rest of the game, then you can't play for a big team. You have to let it go. You know, you need to have a goldfish memory. He needs to go talk to Calafiori and say, "How do you fuck up and then turn around and score a worldie? What mental state do you get into?" You know, new player for Arsenal, going to the Etihad for the first time. This is supposed to be a big title. At that stage, it was a title deciding type of game. Nobody anticipated, because Rodri went down in that game. Nobody anticipated Manchester City being what they are, you know, this season, and they didn't anticipate us being who we are this season. So at that stage, there was a lot of pressure on that match, and I was very impressed with Calafiori's ability to fuck up and let Holland, him and Gabriel didn't do well in that position, and then turn around and score a worldie, and then have a good game for the rest of the game. You know, he needs to get into that mindset and that mindset only, because you are gonna get cooked. There is no way that you come out uncooked in this matchup. You will, but you need to recover. You can't just fold up like a cheap ass lawn chair. Johnny says, of course, today didn't change that. Kivior was decreed man of the match. Real make a lot of defensive mistakes. The question is how Odegaard scuffs his shot this time. Well, there's other players on the field too that can make something happen. It's not just him. Like, you know, the attackers on the pitch. Jay the Long Way says if Timber starts, White has to play center back. That's so true. Let's see. Douglas says, however, I personally would play White as center back. Blaze says, hold on, Courtois is injured. And John says, Tierney has been putting nothing but good performances every time he comes on. Yeah, I mean, the bar is low, I think, for Tierney, because everybody likes him. And, you know, nobody likes Zinchenko. Nobody likes Kivior. A big section of the fan base doesn't like Calafiori, you know. So outside of MLS, who I can already see the tides are turning on him because Arsenal fans are deeply unserious people. Anything that's not those players is going to be elevated. Tierney, as long as he doesn't fall down and get injured, people will say that he's playing well. He is playing decent and he's putting in good performances, but so much so that I would drop him into the biggest game of our season after not really playing at all. It just feels very like, I just don't like the other players who just play Tierney, you know, because nobody would drop in a player that's played such little football in a game like this, that we haven't seen play for us in a million years. This is the first time, like the other week, that Tierney has ever played Champions League with us, and he's been at the club for a million fucking years. I know we weren't playing in Champions League before, but he just hasn't been here. So outside of, you know, subbing him on for a different look or something like that, I feel so confident in Tierney coming in and playing his role. But in terms of elevating him in any sort of way at this situation, feels very much so like I just don't like the other players that play Tierney. And I don't think that that's the, I don't know. I'm not sure that that makes a lot of sense to me, but I like Tierney. Don't get me wrong. Everyone likes Tierney. So, you know, Johnny says only idiots don't like Calafiori, but he's not available. He'd be great as a center back. Yeah, it'd be great if he was available when we fucking need him for the first time this season. This is the time, you know, so they need to look at Calafiori and Tomiyasu very closely this summer. I know that we won't get rid of Calafiori, but there needs to be a very clear, like, if you can't stay fit for this amount of time next season, you're going to have to kick it. There's no way we can have another Tom. Tomiyasu has been here just as long as Ben White and Odegaard, but he's played significantly less football. Significantly less football. Outside of the first season that he came in, he has been a sick note. And so having a player around that long, I know that his qualities and his whatever, his ability, his talent, his versatility, all those things would make it so difficult. But genuinely, 100 million or 100,000 pounds a week surely could go to somebody that plays more than the odd game here or there. We're getting past the point of Tomiyasu is so good that you just want him around. I know that he'll get another season, but those are two players that they need to have there needs to be some sort of cutoff. There has to be, because we are continuously having to buy left backs because of them. We are consistently buying left backs because of Zinchenko, Tierney, Tomiyasu, and now Kala. And that just can't happen. Kivior being the worst of the lot and being the only one available is so Arsenal, it's crazy. John says Tierney has been putting one of the best crosses at Arsenal, but no one has been capitalizing. Calafiori is slow, just like the Italian Zinchenko. Big says if Odegaard doesn't show up even after his work wife is back, we'll need to have a discussion if his form continues next season. And I do think that I've already said that next season, if he maintains whatever level, we've gotten the attackers and stuff, then I'll agree. But this is all premeditated or this is premature. And then what will happen next season is because people want so badly to be right that even if he is playing well, they'll try to make it that he's not, because Arsenal fans are deeply unserious. So you should want Odegaard to come back into form and to be good enough and to go back to the form that we saw him the previous 2 seasons, because he is your captain and he was one of our best players and one of the best in the world pre this season. So anybody who doesn't want Odegaard to get back into form to be right is not okay. You should want those players. Like, I would love for nothing more than Martinelli to get back to 2022, 2023 form. If he doesn't, it is what it is. But I would love for that. I would never want a player not to get back into form to be right. But we know that that's how our fan base is. So I already know next season, if Odegaard doesn't become Kevin De Bruyne, people are going to be deeply unserious. Sam says, oh, you guys are talking to each other. If you think Calafiori is slow, try playing Gabriel or Saliba at fullback for center back. His speed is good enough. Blaise says, I think the only problem is how the atmosphere in the stadium will be against Real Madrid. Last season against Bayern, the atmosphere was poor without Bayern fans at the Emirates. I mean, I saw us get rattled against Lens. I've seen us shit our pants against Lens. The kind of like traditional European stadium does something to us. We were terrible against Porto. I thought that was an even worse performance, in my opinion, to Bayern, and Bayern was really bad. Some of our worst performances under Mikel have been away from home in Europe, so that in itself is already scary. So if we don't show up at home, we might as well not even go to Madrid. We might as well just give the tickets away. There's no way that you can go to the Bernabeu scared. There's just no way. But I seen y'all shook at Lens. I've seen you shook, so yeah. But we will see. We will see. The home leg, you gotta keep that respectable. You gotta keep it respectable. The fans, I hate to ask them to show up because I do think that they've need something to cheer about. But if there was ever a time to just put your best foot forward, it would be in this match, and you're going to have to lift the boys because they need an extra player out there. They're not going to have their best 11. They're going to be missing one of their biggest personalities, so the fans are going to have to do a little bit. And I hate to ask anything because I know what it's like watching Arsenal, paying all that money to go watch them play, and they're fucking terrible. So I get it. Or we just don't create any chances, or we're just passing it sideways and backwards. I get it, but if there's ever a time to like kind of put that aside and just be kind of like diluted, it's then. It's next week. Johnny says, if you think, oh yeah, I don't think Calafiori is. I think Calafiori is playing left back when he should be playing left-sided center back. So yeah. Sam says, I guess if we have a real number 8, we could not need left backs inverting and leaving gaps at the back. Douglas says, Jess, I'm watching the Madrid game, and if anything to go by, then our game plan should look at utilizing our wingers because there's a bucket loads of space to exploit. I mean, our whole game plan is built around the wingers being high producers. So, and to be honest, in games against Real Madrid, your attackers are going to be in the spotlight. I don't know what team in the world does not require their attackers to be their best players or their most dangerous or their most high producing on the pitch. We're the only team that I've seen all of a sudden everybody behind the attack is under way more pressure than the attackers themselves. So it's not like they're children. Ethan is the only player that I don't require or expect anything out of. But everybody else, I expect them to be our best players, putting their best foot forward, making it shake. They get off so easy. I'm not quite sure why that is, except for Martinelli. I think Martinelli gets beat up. He does. But, they're going to have to create moments of magic. That's what the Champions League is fucking about. It's not going to be about the pretty patterns and all that type of stuff. They're going to have the games of their lives. And so, yes, you can ask a lot from the midfield to get the ball to you. And for the most part, our midfield and defense allows our attackers to be in the box 90% of the game, so the least that they can do is take a decent shot, get, to score a goal, so it's going to be about them, it really is going to be about them getting it done. Ash says, do you think it's time to put Ethan in the midfield and let him play as a 10? No, because we've seen that and will not start at all. We've seen him start in midfield and he struggled. I think we just have to, I know people's like, well, as soon as somebody has a poor game in a position that we were okay with, we want to move him. I think ultimately, like, Ethan is just hitting the little block, he's just hitting that little block, let's just relax. I think he can play a little bit at the 10. He can play a little bit on the wing, but he's still 17 and he needs time to develop. So I can already see that people are trying to figure out somewhere else to put Ethan because he's had a couple of off games, but nobody was complaining about him playing on the wing when he scored against Brighton. Nobody was complaining about him playing on the wing when he was playing against whatever team we're playing in Europe. So all of his goals, except for maybe one, have come from him on the wing. So there's nothing wrong with it. He just needs to adjust, and he's just hitting the inevitable young player wall. We don't need to move him. Eventually he'll be in midfield, but if you're getting banged up in on the wing against these fullbacks, then he definitely can't play in Mikel's midfield right now because Mikel's midfield doesn't require anybody not to be involved in duels. Absolutely everybody is required to be good off the ball. There's a lot of emphasis on pressing. There's a lot of emphasis on getting stuck in. And so Ethan, the last place you want him to be is in the throes of midfield if we're not going to give him freedom in the midfield to do none of that. And Mikel's not going to. So leave him where he's at. It's fine. Relax. Calma. It's going to be okay. Ethan is going to be fine. He's just having the inevitable wall. It's cool. It's fine. Jordan says, we won't come across much differences or even shuffling the bunch under Mikel. He has one season left, in my opinion, which is next season. Johnny says, how about qualification chances? Robbie, 35%, Dan Potts, and Turkish 10%. I say 20%. I was 30% before Gabriel's injury. What qualification chances? You mean of Champions League? Or what kind of qualification chances? You mean qualification for the next round? Oh, you're talking about qualification chances into the next round. It's I would say it was 30% before, but after Gabriel's injury, it's probably 15. I think it really makes it even worse. And even people, 30% is a lot, not when the other person has 70%. We're not the worst team in the world. It's not Real Madrid going up against Leicester, or something like that. This is Arsenal versus Real Madrid. So as bad as we are at times, I do think giving us any less than 30% pre-Gabriel's injury and knowing that Saka's back is a little being dramatic, and a little bit over the top because you're just being an asshole. But I think now that Gabriel is out, I do think that bangs this up because there is Gabriel versus Kivior is a huge drop off. So I would say about 15% now that the injury is there, but pre that I would give us 30%. And if that sounds like a lot, it's fucking not because the other person has 70, so I would say it's about that, Victor says, saying we have zero chance is so dramatic. Stop being such a crybaby. We aren't that bad. My whole thing is, if we're as bad as you say we are and we have a 0% chance against Real Madrid, then why would you ever have anticipated or expected us to win anything this season? You don't have expectations of us winning the league, or before the season, you wouldn't say, yeah, but Mikel failed because he didn't win any trophies. You shouldn't have any expectation of us winning trophies if you don't think we have a single percentage chance against Real Madrid, because no chance means you are shit. No percent chance against Real Madrid means that you are horrendous. You are not a team that should even be in this competition at this stage in it. Nobody would have given Dortmund a 0% chance. And Dortmund, to me, is not better than us. They're not, so I do think it's dramatic, and it's just par for the course. As somebody that loves drama, it's dramatic to me, so I would have given us a 30% chance before the Gabriel injury, but that has really hurt us badly because the ripple effect of that is massive, so yeah, but the fuck. Douglas says, having recently watched the second leg of Atletico versus Barca, I noticed that the way that they play was pretty much the same as what we've been doing this season. Who? Atletico Madrid versus Barca? Who will we play like? Jagoon says, we might have to try to take it to pens somehow. Did you see what happened at Atletico Madrid in them pens? Something will happen. So, it should have been ruled out, but my goodness, it was so harsh. The black magic was definitely on display there. I just think we need to put our best foot forward. Let's see where we're at. I don't think you should ever go into a scenario hoping for pens, because pens to me are very much a crapshoot, in my opinion. I just think you have less control of your outcome once you get to penalties, whereas you have more control of your scenario in the 90 minutes that you play. So our goal needs to be to win it over the two legs. And if we have to take it to penalties, then it is what it is. But to me, penalties are not a good strategy for anybody that is meant to be a top 10 team at this stage. I think we are widely considered a top 10 team in Europe. A top 10 team in Europe, even as banged up as we are, is not going to hope for penalties before we even kick a ball. So to me, penalties would be I'm not watching penalties if we go to penalties with them. I'll be out in my car waiting for it to be over. There's just no way I'm not watching. Sam says, win or lose, I'm excited to see us play against Real Madrid. I've wanted this for a long time. Blaze says, the reason why some fans don't have confidence is because our record in the cup under Arteta is not good. We don't play good in the cup competition. I understand that. I've been there, but 0% is dramatic. The outcome versus what our chances are completely different. Just because we've been poor, I don't think that is the same as what our chances are. I think that's two different things. I get it, but I still think it's dramatic. I'll be honest. I must be honest. Because again, we're always big mouth talking about what we should be winning and what we should be winning the league and we should be doing this. But I would never say that we should be winning the league if I don't rate the team enough to give us more than 1%, against Real Madrid. That team, a 0% chance, that team, you should have never been thinking we were going to win the league. You should have never had those types of expectations. You should have never had expectations that we would win anything. So I'm just trying to say that you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't think we're shit and then have expectations higher than a shit team. I think we're better than that. So my expectations are always that most of the time I feel like we do perform lower than what we are expected to. And my expectation is that we have a 30% chance. If we perform like ass, then it is what it is. I think that we're better than what people give us credit for, even though we still have gaps. There's two things can be true at the same time, if that makes sense. Douglas says, I meant Atletico's style of playing on the day was pretty much the same as ours. Kemba says, Timber is going to neutralize the black magic, comma. Victor says, for all the praise I have for Raya, his penalty work is scary, no aura when standing for a pen, and then he dives super early. I want to say Raya is our best goalkeeper in terms of saving penalties. I could be wrong, but Raya has saved quite a few penalties in the short time. I mean, he hasn't had a full season at Arsenal, and I know that he saved 4. And I think Ramsdale maybe saved 1, and I can't remember any that Leno saved. So, again, penalties, 99% of the time, the only goalkeeper that I can think of that regularly saves penalties is Emmy, and Emmy did not play for us long enough for us to see what he was like at Arsenal. He does that for Argentina. He doesn't do that for anyone else. But is Emmy and probably Oblak in his prime saved quite a few penalties. I'm thinking like goalkeepers of like most times it hits the back of the net, so somebody that saved like 4 penalties so far at Arsenal is not going to get any shade from me in terms of his penalty thing. Most times they go in the back of the net. My expectation is not Donnarumma, Pickford. 9 times out of 10, the ball hits the back of the net. So that's why I'm saying, like, when I'd rather take it to penalties. Maybe you feel like it's more of a 50-50 chance. So I kind of understand that, but I think your destiny is pretty much like it's way less in your control once it gets to the penalties. I'll be honest. I just don't think that would never be my goal. Johnny says, well, Raya did pull up a miracle at Atalanta and against Porto. Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. I'm like, yeah, he does dive the wrong way, in some of the ones, but I feel like you're being a little harsh, especially when there's some goalkeepers, I can't remember a single time that they ever did anything, ever, So, yeah. Victor says the bar isn't that high, to be fair. Yeah, Raya had a good game against Atalanta and Porto, but recently Raya has been diving so early. Johnny says it's no higher than 80%, just about 4.5 penalties go in at best. I mean, 4 out of 5, that's still quite a bit. I'm just saying that, like, that would just never, my goal before a ball is even kicked would never be to go to penalties. Now, if we pull up to the Bernabeu at a 2-goal deficit, then yeah, the best I can probably hope for is penalties, that we even it up, and then, we get into extra time and all that kind of stuff, and then we pull it out, then, maybe I'd be hoping for penalties. Maybe halfway through the game at the Bernabeu, we're under the cosh, and we're getting blammed, and we're just barely holding on. I'm hoping for a penalty shootout, but before a ball is even kicked, it's going to be a no for me, especially because I haven't seen us win a penalty shootout outside of Porto, or, like we've seen recently this season, players miss penalties under pressurized situations. So I'm thinking, let's just play our game during and see what happens. But yeah, if we're drawn like, it's even, halfway through the second half at the Bernabeu, or we're under it in extra time, yeah, I'm going to be hoping for penalties. You know what I mean? Ash says the only way Raya saves a pen in this game is if Vinny takes it. Bro is so bad at it. Yeah. I don't know, a little harsh on Raya, somebody that's actually saved penalties for Arsenal. A little harsh, little harsh. I'm just gonna say that. But yeah, I kind of understand that. I kind of get it. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get out of here. I got things to do. Unfortunately, I need to leave the house, which I fucking hate. But later, I'm going to watch the U.S. Women's National Team play, which is nothing better. So, I mean, I love watching Arsenal, but I love my girlies. So, yeah, I will talk to you guys later. Today is Saturday, so maybe we'll do something tomorrow. Manchester Derby, correct? Is tomorrow, so maybe we'll talk after that. But make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel on your way out. I know we didn't talk about the game, but who wants to talk about a 1-1 draw against Everton when we're not giving a fuck, so yeah, but like and subscribe on your way out, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.